Good evening. We are learning Parashat Nitzavim. Parashat Nitzavim is the second shortest parsha in the Torah. It only has 40 verses, with the next week's parsha, Parashat Vayelech, is the smallest, which only has 30 verses. And usually, most of the years, these two Torah portions are read together. And even then, 30 plus 40, it's only 70 verses. Even when they're combined, they are still one of the shortest parshiot in the Torah. But even though it's so short, only 40 verses, it has a lot of messages, as we will see. Now, the famous Vilna Gaon, the genius from Vilna, who lived about 250-300 years ago, he said that the Torah portions of Sefer Devarim, of Deuteronomy, should be viewed as prediction of what's going to happen in the last millennia, the last 1,000 years that we're living in now. Each of the 5 books of Moses corresponds to one of the 1,000 years, but it doesn't start at the beginning. It starts in the second millennia, with Bereshit corresponding to the second millennia, Shemot to the third, Vayikra to the fourth, Bamidbar to the fifth, and Devarim to the sixth. We are now in the 6,000 years. 5,000 years already passed of human history, and we are now in year 782 of the 6th millennia. We are getting to the end. And the 10 parshiot corresponding to the 10 centuries are in Sefer Devarim. And if you count, you will find that there are actually 11 Torah portions in Sefer Devarim. But since most years Sefer, the chapter of Nitzavim and the chapter of Vayelech are read together, so they are counted for 1 century. And therefore, if we correspond the Jewish years to the secular years, Parashat Nitzavim and Vayelech correspond to years 1940 until 2040. That means if we split them like it is this year, each parsha gets 50 years. And Parashat Nitzavim corresponds to the period of 1940 until 1990, and Parashat Vayelech corresponds to the years 1990 until 2040. So we would be now in the middle of, or towards the end of Parashat Vayelech, which we will learn next week, B'ezrat Hashem. Now, keep that in mind. As we read Parashat Nitzavim, try to see similarities between it and the 50 years between 1940 and 1990. And keep in mind that this prediction was made 300 years ago. And keep in mind that the Torah was written 3,500 years ago, which means if we find any similarities, they're not by chance. They're not lucky guesses, because 300 years ago no one could have predicted what's going to be 300 years from now precisely. And of course, 3,500 years no human could predict what's going to be. Now let us start. We have a tradition that Parashat Nitzavim and on, Vayelech and Ha'azinu and Zot HaBracha, these 4 Torah portions were all said on the last day of Moshe Rabbeinu. verse 9, chapter 29. You are standing today. The word Nitzavim, the name of this week's Parsha, means standing. You are standing today, all of you, before Hashem your God. Moshe is addressing the entire Jewish people, and he's saying, you are all present during my final address. And what he's trying to do is, he called them for the last time on his last day, and he said, I'm going to speak with you, I'm going to give you rebuke, I'm going to give you messages for future, instructions as well as predictions. And if you have anything to say, if you disagree, please say it. The entire Jewish people were there. They had opportunity to voice their objection. And the fact that nobody did showed that everyone admitted that every word that Moshe said was true. They themselves witnessed it. Now, you're standing today, all of you, before Hashem your God. And he lists all the different layers of the Jewish people. The heads of your tribes, your elders, your officers, all the men of Israel, your children, your women, your converts, and from the lowest profession, from the hewer of your wood, the wood chopper, to the drawer of your water. Included in this are even people who did convert, but we worry that perhaps their conversion is not honest, and therefore we do not allow them to marry the Jewish people, but they can stay among us, and we will protect them, and they will benefit from our society and our infrastructure, and we will protect them militarily as well. But because we're not sure if their conversion was honest, we're not going to marry them. Of course, if they truly are honest, they can say, I will accept the entire Torah now, and I will dip in a mikvah one more time, and now accept me. They have that choice, and the fact that they're not taking that choice shows that they're comfortable where they are. They don't really want to become full-fledged Jews. They just want the privileges or the rights, but they don't want the responsibilities. And these people were appointed by Moshe to be wood choppers and drawers of water for the temple, for the Mishkan. Now, verse 11 continues. For you, why are you standing here? Why did I call all of you to assemble? For you to pass into the covenant of Hashem, your God. One last time I am putting in front of you the covenant of God, and you have the right to accept it. This is my last day, and let's make this covenant one more time. And what is that covenant? The covenant means that there are two sides to the coin. The Jewish people have to do their part, and God has to do his part. And if both parties fulfill their side of the deal, they will have a fruitful partnership. Each one will benefit from the other. However, if one of them breaks their side of the deal, there will be consequences. Like in any deal, they write, if everything goes well, you will receive such a portion of the income. However, if you fail to do your part, there will be a certain fine. There will be a certain penalty. And that is what Moshe is telling them. You will receive blessing for keeping the Torah, or you will receive a curse for not listening to the Torah. And he says, for you to pass into the covenant of Hashem your God, that you will do what he commands and he will protect you, and into his imprecation. Imprecation in English means curse. that Hashem your God seals with you today, in order to establish you today as a people to Him. This is God's part of the deal. You keep the Torah, and I will take you as my people, and that He be a God to you, your protector, as He spoke to you and as He swore to your forefathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. And not only with you alone do I seal this covenant and this imprecation, this curse, but with whoever is here standing with us today before Hashem, our God, and with whoever is not here with us today. Which means even future generations that are going to be born, they're not physically here, but their spiritual essence, their soul is there. This is the same as it was on Har Sinai. When the Jewish people received the Torah, it was not only the physical bodies of the Jews that were there at that moment, but also the souls of their ancestors and the souls of their descendants were all present, which means that even we, our souls, were present there. And our sages say that there were 2 times when every Jewish soul received the Torah. Number 1, every Jew was on Mount Sinai. The soul of every Jew was present on Mount Sinai when God appeared to the Jewish people and gave them the Torah. And number 2, every Jewish person, when he was in his mother's womb, an angel from God taught this fetus and the soul that entered into it the entire Torah. Twice we learned the Torah, twice we reviewed the Torah. So when we are born, the Torah is not new to us. We have God in our essence. We have understanding and appreciation and fear for Torah in our DNA, because our soul experienced the giving of the Torah twice, on Mount Sinai and in our mother's womb. This was the 3rd time when the Jewish people were all there present, this time not for the giving of the Torah, but for the sealing of the covenant. So Moshe said, the covenant is obligatory for every Jew that will ever be born in the future, till the end of time. And even though we were not there, we cannot claim, oh, I wasn't there, therefore it's not obligatory on me. No. I have to fulfill the Torah because I was there and my soul accepted it. Verse 15. For you know, since you know how we dwelled in the land of Egypt and how we passed through the midst of the nations through whom we passed. In the last 40 years that we traveled in the desert, we passed many nations. And you saw their abominations. You saw all the bad things that they were doing. And their detestable idols of wood and stone, of silver and gold that were with them. One of the reasons that Hashem caused us to travel for 40 years was to visit all these nations and to see that there is nothing better in the world than the Jewish religion. All the idols, all the philosophies, all the idealism of other nations is garbage compared to what we have. This way, when we came to our land flowing with milk and honey, and we started observing our Torah, we saw the great difference, and we were not enticed about maybe grass is green on the other side, maybe we should look at the religions of others. No. We experienced it, we observed it, we saw everything they were doing, and we can call it abomination and detestable idols. However, Moshe warns them, perhaps there is among you a man or a woman, or a family or a tribe, whose heart turns away today from being with Hashem, our God, to go and serve the gods of those nations, even though you yourselves saw that these nations are serving nothingness, emptiness, but you still might harbor doubts. Perhaps there is among you a root flourishing with gall and wormwood, two different kinds of bitter substances, bitter plants. And it will be that when such a person hears the words of this curse, he will bless himself in his heart, saying, peace will be with me, though I walk as my heart sees fit. A person might have doubts in his mind. A person might not be sure if Hashem is there, if Judaism is true. And he might say, you know what? Even though these commandments are written in the Torah, and even though the curses are written for not fulfilling the commandments, it's probably not going to happen to me. Hashem is probably going to forgive me. It's okay. And the person blesses himself in his heart, saying, peace will be with me, though I walk as my heart sees fit. I'm going to do whatever is comfortable, whatever I'm used to, and it's okay. I will have peace. However, Hashem or Moshe says, thereby he will add the watered upon the thirsty. This is an expression that he will add sins that are done on purpose to the sins that he did by mistake. If until now, before learning the Torah, before hearing these curses, the person didn't know, and he may have had an excuse, I didn't know that it's so serious. I didn't know that God exists and that he gave us these mitzvot. No one told me. And I didn't know that there's a punishment for them. So I did it by mistake. But now that I heard about it, I received the Torah and I received the warning of the curses for not fulfilling the Torah, and I sealed the covenant. If I will still do what my heart sees fit, I will still disregard the Torah. It will be considered a willful sin, a sin done on purpose in rebellion against God. And such a sin is much more severe and serious. And therefore, in verse 19, it says, Hashem will not be willing to forgive him. For then Hashem's anger and jealousy will smoke against that man. It's an expression of great anger. I understand if you lived in Russia, in Soviet Union, where communists extinguished the last ember, the last yeshiva, they closed mikvah and synagogues and study halls, and they brainwashed you that there is no God and Lenin is the God. Okay, it's excusable. It's not your fault. But when you find out that you're Jewish, you find out that there is God, you find out that there is Torah, and you learn about the mitzvot, and you still ignore it, Hashem will not be willing to forgive him. And the entire curse written in this book will come down upon him. And Hashem will erase his name from under the heavens. Hashem will set him aside for evil from among all the tribes of Israel, like all the curses of the covenant that are written in this book of the Torah. And now, what we read, if we think, what does it correspond to? As we said, the Torah portion of Nitzavim corresponds to the 50 years between 1940 and 1990. And this is the beginning of it. That's exactly when the Holocaust began. And it says, those people that know the Torah, that know about God, and decide to walk away from religion, Hashem will not be willing to forgive them. And His anger will smoke against those people, and the entire curse written in this book will come down upon him. And Hashem will erase his name from under the heavens. And Hashem will set them aside for evil from among all the tribes of Israel. It's scary, but it corresponds to the Holocaust, exact years, the beginning of these 50 years, and exactly what happened and why did it happen. Our rabbis that lived through the Holocaust, that witnessed it, they testify that the Jewish people in Europe at that time were doing exactly what it's written in this parsha. They knew about Judaism, they knew about God, they all went to yeshiva when they were young, and they knowingly abandoned it, and they went to the abominations of the nations and the detestable idols of those days, the communism and capitalism and all the other isms. And they were leaving Judaism in droves, happily, and such a thing happened to them. And just today I heard one rabbi saying that actually the Holocaust was a kindness of Hashem, because through the Holocaust these people were killed because they were Jewish, and any Jew that is killed for being Jewish is considered to have given up his life for the sake of God, because he is killed because he belongs to the Jewish nation, whether he wants it or not. Even if he was running away from being Jewish, but when he is caught by the non-Jews and he is killed for being a Jew, against his will, he is counted among the righteous of the Jewish people, because he gave up his life against his will for the sake of the Jewish people. And he goes straight to Gan Eden, to Garden of Eden. Whereas if the Holocaust didn't happen, all these millions of Jews would become modern, would become communists, would become capitalists, and they would slowly abandon entire Judaism. They would intermarry, they would disappear, and their souls would have to go to Gehinnom, to hell. And therefore Hashem said, I don't want to allow that to happen, even though they deserve to go to Gehinnom, because they chose to do bad. But in His kindness, Hashem said, even though they sinned against me, I will send all of them to Gan Eden. How? By sending evil people against them and killing them because they're Jewish. Now, verse 21 says the reaction of people who lived in later generations. The later generations will say, their own children who will arise after them, and the foreigner who will come from a distant land, when they will see the plagues of that land and its illness with which Hashem has afflicted it, sulfur and assault and a conflagration of the entire land, it cannot be sown and it cannot sprout, and no grass shall rise upon it, like the upheaval of Sodom and Amorah, Admah and Tzivoim, which Hashem overturned in His anger and wrath. And all the nations will ask, For what reason did Hashem do so to this land? Why this wrathfulness of great anger? Now, being that this is a prediction can come, since it's without a date, it can come at any time in Jewish history. We will look back and we will say we recognize from these words our history. And so these words are also recognizable in the destruction of the first temple and in the destruction of the second temple, because the land became desolate, nothing grew in it. Every time the Jewish people were exiled from the land of Israel, the fertile land that was flowing with milk and honey very quickly turned into a desert, as if sulfur and salt were placed all over it and nothing can grow. And all the nations that came there, they were surprised. What's going on? Why did Hashem do such a thing to this beautiful land? They all knew it. It was on crossroads between Africa, Asia, and Europe, right in the middle of three continents. All the merchants, all the travelers knew how good the land of Israel was. And all of a sudden they came and it's a desert. Why did Hashem do so to this land? Why this wrathfulness of great anger? The Ramban, who lived about 800 years ago, he traveled to the land of Israel, and he describes that the land of Israel was really a pity to look at. Besides a few Bedouins and a few camels, the land was desolate. Nothing grew there. No one lived there. And he said that this prophecy came true. The land of Israel without the Jews is not a land where anyone can live. However, being that we are applying this Torah portion to the 50 years between 1940 and 1990, we can see in this what the nations are going to be asking about the Holocaust. Why did Hashem do this to this land, to European countries? Why this wrathfulness of great anger? And they will say, they will figure out the answer. Because they forsook, they abandoned the covenant of Hashem, the God of their forefathers, that He sealed with them when He took them out of the land of Egypt. Even though this is already 3,500 years later, but they are still expected to be loyal and observe the Torah. And they, because of great pressure of enlightenment, of the false science that they were pushing at that time, and of poverty and other difficult circumstances, the Jewish people failed the test at that time, and they went and served the gods of others and prostrated themselves to them, gods that they knew not and that Hashem did not apportion to them. And of course, during the first temple, this was to be taken literally. The Jewish people during the first temple era did serve idols, and that's what caused the first temple to be destroyed. However, in more recent years, when idolatry was basically abolished, when we say that they served gods of others and prostrated themselves to them, gods that they did not know, it refers to ideologies, false ideologies like communism and evolution and false science and so on and so forth, and some more modern religions which might be monotheistic, but they're still false.